Baki was a white student at the University of Michigan, and he wanted to attend the university. But Michigan had a quota system, and his grades were substantially better, and his SAT scores were substantially better than several minority students that were admitted. So Baki brought suit. Baki said, hey, I'm a victim of reverse discrimination. You are denying me equal protection of the law. And Baki brought his suit, went to the United States Supreme Court, and he slightly won. When I say slightly, it was a 5-4 decision. Four justices said reverse discrimination was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, and you can't do it. But you had 4 other justices saying, no, under the 1964 Civil Rights Act, using quotas to admit students to institutions of higher education was okay. In the middle, you had the guy from Richmond, Lewis Powell. And Powell went with the 4 to some degree. He said you can't use quotas.
Fuck you!
Okay, folks, this is going to be the one and only time that I say this. Whether you are cheering or jeering, we are asking you to allow the speaker to make his comments. If you persist in behavior that disrupts this program, the DPS officers will be asked to remove you from the premises. This is the one and only warning.
As I was saying, Justice Lewis Powell was a swing justice. You had 5 saying no quotas. Quotas would be a violation of equal protection. You had 4, and then you had 4 saying no, quotas are okay under the Civil Rights Act. Lewis Powell said you can't have an ironclad quota like the University of Michigan was doing. They were saying 16 out of 100 had to be minority students, regardless of grade. Lewis Powell said you can't do that, but you can't have affirmative action and have race as a consideration. So that was the prevailing view in 1978, and that drifted on down until 2003. And then we had 2 more University of Michigan cases. One involved the undergraduate admissions practices, and one involved the graduate school admissions practices. Now, keep in mind, we have been to 2003, we've been about 25 years since the Baki decision. But the court really, in its view of using quotas and preferences in admitting students to institutions of higher education, really didn't change their decision much. You had 4 that followed the 4 justices in Baki that says no quotas, basically no affirmative action. Then you had 4 that said, oh yes, quotas are fine, we can use that in a way to get cultural diversity, and that's okay. Sandra Day O'Connor was the swing justice. In 2003, she was the Lewis Powell of 1978. And Sandra Day O'Connor said, what we are going to do under the undergraduate application, that is disallowed because it's more like a quota than it is simply, they were using points. If you are a minority, you got added points to get in. Sandra Day O'Connor basically said no to that. But in law school, they didn't use it as points. They used it as something like a consideration. And she flipped over and said, what the University of Michigan was doing in law school was okay. So, in 2003, we had the split decision. The undergraduate admission were ruled a violation of the U.S. Constitution, but what they were doing in graduate school was not. Sandra Day O'Connor did say in dictum that the affirmative action that was prevalent in the law school would run out at some time. She said, based on history, we're going to allow it basically for a little while, but not forever. In 2007, another important case. In drawing school lines, Seattle, Michigan, and another state said we're going to draw them on the basis of race. Justice Roberts, Justice Alito, Justice Scalia, and Justice